the land, the Cleveland Browns, or as we like to call them, the skid marks. Thank you, Shag Daddy. I learned something today. Why do we call them the skid marks? Well, it's pretty much their entire history of futility, of mediocrity. They're pretty much losing ways. And even when they win one year, they're right back to losing and being the toilet plungers of the NFL, the skid marks on your underwear. So for the Cleveland Browns, it's been a pretty interesting offseason for them. But before we can get into that, we have to briefly discuss what happened. How did we get to that point? Well, they were literally on the verge of going to their first ever AFC Championship game in the 2020 season. They had their first playoff berth in nearly 20 years. They demolished the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road, and they nearly took advantage of a Patrick Mahomes Kansas City Chiefs in the second half of the game, of that AFC divisional game, but they couldn't, and they lost, and they were watching at home the Buffalo Bills and the Chiefs in the title game that could have been theirs. And then this season came. They lose the first game to Kansas City in a rematch. And then week 2 came along. Baker Mayfield hurts his shoulder. He suffers a torn labrum. And it gets progressively worse all year. And his allowance to do so, it affected the whole offense. And there were a lot of untimely injuries as well, especially to the running back position like Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And there were a lot of COVID-19 positive tests for the rest of the team late in the year. And as a result, it led to a disappointing 8-9 record. And I think the biggest thing was, Kevin Stefanski had a lot of weird coaching decisions in games, but it most of it contributed to the Browns not shutting down Baker Mayfield, not forcing him out like on IR. They could have made a decision, but they didn't. They didn't check on him. So that's where the skid marks failed. They literally failed in 2021 because they let a injured quarterback, a very hobbled quarterback who couldn't throw, play for much of the season until they were literally out of the playoffs. Like, what the hell? So we get to this point now in 2022. We're like nearly on the verge of kind of a new start for the Cleveland Browns. Now, why do I say that? Well, let's look at what they did in the offseason. Starting with their re-signings, they did manage to get a couple of key pieces back on the defensive end, like Jadeveon Clowney, Sheldon Day, Ronnie Harrison, and then Anthony Walker. Then on the offensive side, you got one of your breakout backup running backs, Dearness Johnson back, and tackle Chris Hubbard. And then when you look at the offensive side of the ball, in terms of your additions, you got Jacoby Brissett from the Miami Dolphins. People were wondering, like, wait, why Jacoby Brissett? Well, that was because the Cleveland Browns, for whatever reason, of all the teams that were involved, they traded for Deshaun Watson. They went out of their way to go out and get Deshaun Watson from the Houston Texans and gave away 3, yes, that's right, first-round picks, and along with 2 fourth-round picks and a future third just for Deshaun Watson. Desperate much? Or typical skid marks behavior? Like, holy hell. Holy hell. The Cleveland Browns, man. I mean, I'll get to my thoughts on that trade, but it seems like at the time, it seems like a risky move. But as the months have progressed, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? They also trade for Amari Cooper, and if all he had to do was give away a 5th and 6th round pick from the Dallas Cowboys. Again, like I said, with the Dallas Cowboys, I'm not sure why they decided to give away Amari Cooper to the skid marks, but it is what it is. They got a big addition. The Cleveland Browns got a big addition, no matter who's at quarterback. So as a result of the Deshaun Watson trade, people wondering, like, what do you do with Baker Mayfield? What do you do with Baker Mayfield? And that was a talking point for the last couple of months since that trade went down. So finally, in recent weeks, Baker Mayfield got traded to the Carolina Panthers for a conditional 4th or 5th round pick in 2024. So there are certain conditions to be met. They also lost Jarvis Landry to the New Orleans Saints. They released their center for whatever reason, J.C. Treader. They also traded away their corner Troy Hill to the LA Rams for a future 5th round pick. So for the Cleveland Browns, it was mainly about getting help, but also losing some help for Deshaun Watson. And they didn't really, because they gave away all those picks to the Houston Texans, they couldn't really do much in the NFL draft. All they could do was draft a corner by the name of Martin Emerson from Mississippi State and a receiver from Purdue by the name of David Bell. So who knows if they turn out or even make the roster. We'll see. So for the Cleveland Browns this offseason, I will say first that they do have a better receiving core. Prior, they had pretty much nobody. The Odell Beckham experiment failed miserably. Primarily that was because, Baker Mayfield couldn't find Odell Beckham in the games he played. Donovan Peoples-Jones had his spurts. David Njoku, he was somewhat reliable. He's somewhat reliable in that offense. But now you add Amari Cooper in that offense, and I think it could make them a little better. And that's why I say they're much better in years past. Now, as for the Deshaun Watson trade, the Browns could either look like the biggest winners or the biggest losers, because there are still some things to figure out with Deshaun Watson's sexual assault allegations, and that what the NFL is going to do in regards to that. Because Deshaun Watson apparently has 20 of 24 of those resolved, but the NFL is currently trying to figure out how many games to suspend Deshaun Watson for. They're trying to get him suspended for the entirety of the season, but it still remains to be seen. Who knows how many it is before the regular season or by training camp or however long it takes. We'll see. We'll see what happens, because the Cleveland Browns have to know sooner rather than later. So they can either try it out Jacoby Brissett for however many games, or maybe even the whole season, or go out and get a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo or some other quarterback that they think that they could trust for however many games or the whole season. Well, who knows? Who knows? So for the Cleveland Browns, it's mainly going to be about how many games is Deshaun Watson going to be suspended for, and how that's going to impact the offense and their outlook on their chances to compete for an AFC North Division title, let alone a playoff spot in 2022. And it's tough. It's really tough to figure out how Cleveland's going to project this year, because everything's right now, as we stand, as I'm putting this out, it's still murky. It is still an unresolved situation. So for the Cleveland Browns, all I can say is that if Deshaun Watson is not suspended at all, miraculously, I'm not saying he won't be, but in the wild event that he is, if Deshaun Watson is not suspended at all, for whatever reason, I can see the Cleveland Browns winning 10 to 11 games. 10 or 11 games. Maybe they get a wild card spot. Maybe they even win the AFC North. I don't know. Whoever gets 10 to 12 wins the AFC North. That's my projection. Now, if Deshaun Watson is suspended for, let's say, half of the season or a portion of that, maybe the Cleveland Browns go 7-10, or maybe 8-9 at best. Because Jacoby Brissett is not a shitty backup, but at the same time, he doesn't really elevate the offense to a 180th degree. And the Browns defense they can hold their own. But again, it's going to be on the offense carrying them. Now, if Deshaun Watson is suspended for the whole season, this is where it gets tricky. Do they roll the dice with Jacoby Brissett? Do they just throw the year away? If they throw the year away, Maybe they'll be one of those bomb barrel teams. 4 to 6 wins. Go for that high draft pick to. Oh wait, why even bother? Why even bother? Because you're giving it to the Houston Texans anyway. So maybe they go out and get that quarterback that's left on the market, whatever that may be, because they don't trust Jacoby Brissett. And maybe they go 6 wins. I don't know if Deshaun Watson is suspended for the whole season. So for the Cleveland Browns, still some stuff to figure out with the Deshaun Watson situation. But whether or not he's suspended, they still have some talent. They still have some talent. They have their quarterback potentially long term, depending on how things look. But for 2022, it's a difficult situation for Cleveland.